So here is the queen. We have finished all of our other pieces and we have moved on to this queen, and it is pretty much the same as the other ones, except a little bit different. We have a top here that has a nice little interesting curve to it, and then this cutout pattern on the very top with some rings and a bow on top. So you may notice that the queen is actually slightly thicker than the other pieces, and that's because as we get more powerful with our pieces, each one of them should be a little more prominent. So my ring down here is still 20 by 20, but this cone part has grown to be 12. And that gives it a little bit more substance. And we also are taking this ring. It is 16 by 16, and its height is 2. And it's going to sit on top of there nicely. And then the column, I've also changed this a little bit, where the top piece that cuts it off has been moved off the ground a little further. That way exposing a little bit more of the curve and giving the queen some more height so that she is shown as a more prominent object. Mine is 28 off of the ground, and that's the only change I've made to that column. These two rings, one of them is 13 or so, or 12.86 by 86. With a height of 1.15. The other one is 11.2 in diameter with a height of 1. And those are what go around. And then here we have another object here, and that is a cone. So you can see that the top radius is actually 6. And that's what creates that sort of flat look to it. So one of the parameters of your cone is to have a top radius and a bottom radius, and that can create that little taper effect. There's other ways you can actually do that. You can do that with a column and a bevel, and that would also work. This part is the head. This is a little bit more tricky. This one we have a ring again, and this time the shape of the ring fits around our cylinder. So here's a cylinder that is 14 by 14. My ring is 14.4 by 14.4, so only slightly bigger. And then I've gone ahead and drawn in this sort of shape. This is a very deep angle here. Yours doesn't have to be perfect, but you can kind of try to sculpt that thing around a little bit to make that thing just right. And that is what we're going to do. The height of the column that I've got is 10.59, and the ring height is going to be 11.81. When I group these together, that's where I get that interesting shape. Now, all you have to do is cut out this pattern here on top. This is a circular pattern, and it's a little bit tricky to make this happen. I'm going to go ahead and put these guys together so you can see exactly what I did. So right here I had this shape. And what we want to do is kind of cut out some notches all the way around. And we did that using one of these cylinders. And this cylinder is pretty small. So if I were to demonstrate that from the beginning, I'm going to take this cylinder and actually just lay it directly on the side of this object. Might help to be on one of these sides. And then I changed the angle, 90 degrees, and then brought this thing down to be tiny, around 4 by 4. And what that does is allow this thing to sit exactly on the side of that thing. And then we can go ahead and move the Z-axis down, probably 1 or less. You might need to change your snap settings if you'd like to make this maybe a half, because it's just a little notch. And that gets us started. If we were to look at this from the top, now I have that object there. I'm going to go ahead and copy it to the other side and tell it to reverse. I'm going to use a mirror here, mirror this way. And we want it to also go in on that same edge. So we can use our work plane. And this time we're going to identify that plane, press D to make that thing push in there all the way, make sure it's up just enough. And then we're going to go ahead and cut in again a unit. And that gets us that other opposing side. That looks actually pretty good. Now what we want to do is I'm going to reset my work plane. We're going to take this thing and we're going to press the duplicate button. And then without deselecting, we're going to keep that selected. We're going to select again. We're going to move 45 degrees. and then press duplicate 2 more times, and that is how we get that sort of ring. Once you have all of those in there, we can go ahead and turn them into a group. Turn that group into a whole, and that is how we make that top piece. But then we can cut these pieces like so, group, and that's how we end up with that kind of riveted design like that. The last part is this sort of circle. You can actually just have a half sphere go in there, and then on the bottom I have another half sphere that just happens to be shrunk down a little bit. The height on this one is 0.6 and its width is 6.7. The height on my bigger sphere is 2.5, and the bottom radius or diameter is 5.53. So that is how the queen gets put together. Once you have all those pieces done, again, you can line them all up and group them, and that's how we ended up with this particular queen, and that is the end of this video.